Hello everyone, my name is Esperanza Rangel, and today I'm going to be talking about should you be buying a 4-string bass, a 5-string bass, or a 6-string bass. If you hear a lot of noise, it's because I have my AC on. It's super hot today. I don't know why, because a few days ago it wasn't this hot, so I don't know what's happening. But anyways, I wanted to talk about this because I have gotten a few questions from other bass players or beginner bass players that are not sure if they want to do a 4-string, a 5-string, or even a 6. So I'm going to be talking mainly about 4s and 5s because that is where my experience is at. I have jammed out on a 6-string bass not too long ago and a few years ago, but it's really not my jam, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. But I was a 4-string bass player for many years of my life. I think almost all my bass playing career was a 4-string bass, but I always kind of just felt like I needed something more, and it was talent. I needed more talent. No, actually, no, in all seriousness, I did feel like I needed something more when I was playing, not because I wanted to do more stuff, because you could do equal amount of things on a 4-string than a 5 and a 6 or whatever, but I don't know, I wanted a different sound, and at that time I didn't really understand what it was. Just to fast forward a little bit, I did end up buying a 5-string bass back then, which I ended up just giving back, or I don't remember if I sold it or I gave it to someone. But the point is that I was a little bit discouraged because when I got that 5-string bass, it was a Squire Fender, and it was really heavy. It was a really, really heavy bass. It was very uncomfortable, and the neck was just very thick, like I think more than normal, and it was just uncomfortable to play. I didn't like it. I wasn't happy with it, so I ended up just not playing it anymore. So like I said, I became discouraged, and I thought maybe a 5-string bass is just not for me. Mind you, I do play norteño. I've been playing norteño and just recently started jumping into other géneros, but I will mainly be referring to norteño because that's where my experience is at. So full disclosure, I'm not an expert in anything. I just talk about my personal experiences, and here are my experiences playing a 4, a 5, and a 6. So first off, when I was playing a 4-string bass, I was okay. I mean, that's what your standard bass is, a 4-string bass, and it was fine. It's just that I just felt like I wanted something else, and I didn't know what it was. I couldn't pinpoint what it was. But like I said, I always was a 4-string bass, and it was just fine. I've seen bass players who are freaking amazing who play mainly 4-string basses. For example, Felix Salinas from Intocable, just maestro en el bajo, and he plays a 4. I've seen him with a 4 mainly, or a lot of the things he's done has been with the 4. So it didn't really matter. It just thinks it matters more on you as a bass player. What you could contribute in a bass is really up to you as a bass player. It doesn't matter how many strings you have. However, if you do have a 5-string bass, for example, or a 6-string bass, and you don't really play the 5-string or the 6-string, then you're kind of compromising how you sound in a way, because if you are able to execute that 5th string and the 6th string properly, you're going to see the benefits of playing those strings. You know, it could really pay off. But I've seen 6-string bass players or 5-string bass players who don't use the 5th or the 6th string, and then at that point I feel maybe you're cutting down on your potential. Maybe you have a 6-string bass and you should be playing a 5 or a 4, or who knows, even a 7. But anyway, I know for a fact in my case, playing a 4-string bass, I just wanted something else, and I went into a 5-string bass. Now I've been playing a 5-string for 1 year, and I am very happy, very, very happy. It's a Fender jazz bass, and I couldn't be any happier. I don't anticipate going into a 4-string bass anytime soon, maybe even at all. But I really think I will not be going into a 6-string bass. So I've jammed out before in a 6-string bass, and I think I would be dishonoring a 6-string bass because I don't really know, I'm not interested in learning that yet, at least when you jump into a 5-string or a six string, you do have to understand that there is a learning curve. There is a learning curve to these basses, so it's not something like, oh, I already passed the first level and I played a 4 and I'm gonna jump into the next level, which is a 5. It's not like that. It's a whole different ball game when you start playing a 5 and then when you start playing a 6. So just be mindful of that and make sure that you are able to do all the arrangements you do on a 4, you're able to do them on a 5 or a 6. And what I mean by that is you actually are able to play those arrangements in a 5, in the 5th string, and in the 6th string. That's really important when you are a bass player trying to transition into different basses. Not too long ago, I did encounter a bass player who was playing a 6th string, and I stayed behind his gig because I wanted to hear how he plays. So after hearing him for about an hour or two, at the end on his break, I asked him, I was a little bit curious because as I saw him play, I didn't really see him play the 6th string much and the 5th string not too much either. And so I just was curious about the reason why he had a 6th string. So once I asked him like, oh, hey, you know, I was hearing you play and I noticed that you weren't really playing the 6th string. Can I ask you why you have a 6th string? Like, what do you like about it? Just talk to me about it pretty much. So then he proceeds to tell me that he has a 6th string bass because it looks cool. So I think in that moment I was like, okay, well, I get it, you know, we have a bass, we want to look cool, but I also think you would want to sound cool. I do think this bass player, I will not be naming him, but I think this bass player is really cutting down his potential. I think he has a great potential and he would be able probably to benefit if he really put work into the 6th string and really incorporating that 6th string into what he's playing. Mind you, when we are playing in the norteño music, you really don't need much unless you're giving me like Maurilio Pineda vibes or like Don Chencho vibes from Los Cachorros. Then that 6th string really doesn't do much. We're not really doing much. Keep in mind that our norteño music has been a little bit more elaborate now, so there is a lot more you could do. There's a lot more room to play now. But I do think that if you are playing a 4, a 5, or a 6 and you're not playing it in its full potential, then it's really wasting, you know, that talent on a bass that is not comfortable for you. So maybe this 6th string bass player, maybe he would benefit from playing a 5 or maybe even a 4, and it's nothing wrong with it. People think that, oh, you play a 4, oh, I play a 5, or oh, I play a 6. Like they see it as like a different type of, like if it was just better, but it's really not. Like I said, it really goes back to how you play. I've seen 4th string bass players that are just crazy on their fretboards, and I've seen 5th string bass players who are just not that great, and you know, I could be one of them, I don't know. So just know that there is a learning curve to playing a 5, a 4, or a 6th string bass, and you just want to get what is more comfortable to you. Another thing that you do want to keep in mind when getting a 5th string bass is that sometimes 5th string basses are necessary for certain types of music. Mind you, we are playing norteño, so not that, I mean, I don't know of any songs that require you to have a 5 or a 6. You could play pretty much any song, any norteño song in a 4th string. But if you go into different type of géneros, it might be a little bit different. I know that there are some Stevie Wonder songs that you do have to have that 5 string because of the tone that it gives it. And you could play it in a 4, you would just have to, you know, change your positions or your not your progression, but where you're playing. And it might compromise the sound of the bass. And in those kinds of songs, you do want to stay close as close as possible to the original. So I think in those kind of cases, it does matter. Other than that, I think that you might be uncomfortable playing a 5 if that 5 string is just kind of lingering and you're not really doing anything with it, because it does cause a sound. It is the B string is a thick string, so when you're playing on the higher strings, then that string that's a lower sound is just gonna probably make a lot of noise if you don't know how to mute it. So that's another thing you want to keep in mind as well. Also, if you are playing like a 4 and you know that there are songs, like I said, in different géneros where you have to play a song where it typically is played in a 5-string bass, compromising the sound, maybe it's not something you want to do. So then you do want to jump into a 5 and learn specifically what a 5-string bass does. And in that case, you know, you got to take your time. I just recently had a student who went from a 4-string to a 5-string. I think he bought this 5-string, I think he said, because he originally wanted to get a 4 because that's what he has been playing, but he decided to give a 5-string a shot, which is perfect. I think you should be trying different basses to see what's best for you. And he did mention that it was very difficult for him because he kept getting confused. I know that happened to me when I went into a 5-string. I started getting really confused because I was like, what is this string? Now I'm like losing my progression here. And so it took me a while to start, you know, relearning everything and relearning it on a 5-string when I started playing again. So I know my student said that he was kind of having trouble with it, but I, you know, advised him, as I advised everyone else, take your time. Practice outside of your gigs. Don't just take it randomly into gigs and expect to just play wonderfully on a 5 when you haven't really had much experience with it. So just give it time, you know, make sure that you are practicing at home and you're practicing that 5-string in its entirety, and that you're able to do the same arrangements that you're doing on a 4, you're able to put them on that 5th string too, because then that's where you start getting the benefits of having that added string. So I know that I have said this many times, but it really goes down to just personal preference as what you want to play. But if you are playing a 5-string and you're not really using that 5th string, or you're playing a 6 and you're not really using the 6th string, maybe you should consider going back to a 5 or going back to a 4, because it really will benefit you, going into whatever bass does feel more comfortable. Trust me, there is no shame. I don't know why there's this misconception of like playing a 4 versus playing a 5, and it's like, well, it just really depends on what kind of bass player you are. Like I keep saying, you know, you could execute so much in a 4-string bass and maybe not so much in a 5, and it's just really because of, you know, how much effort you put into this, how much practice you're putting into this. I remember growing up and you know, always having a 4-string and then jamming out in 5-string basses, and when I would jam out into 5-string basses, they would always ask me like, or tell me, well, you play a 4, you know, 5, you know, you're not gonna be able to do it. So when I would jam out on the 5-string basses, I didn't really play the 5-string because I wasn't comfortable playing it. And little by little, I started trying to incorporate it, because then I had a chance to play the 5-string, and then that's when I kind of knew, like, I'm a 5-string bass player. I really like playing that 5th string. I still have a lot to go myself. Like I said, there's so much more that you could do on a 5-string, and I do want to explore more into it. But if you are really looking into maybe starting on a 4, a 5, or a 6, I think it's always healthy to just practice in a little bit of all of them. Just kind of shop around for a little bit until you find what you're most comfortable in, because you might find that you might be just a 4-string bass player, and that's fine, and you might be a 5-string bass player, and that's also okay, and you might be a 6-string bass player, and that's also okay. So pretty much it's just, you know, remembering that you have that added functioning tool, which is that extra string, you know, whether it's the 5th string or the 6th string, it is a functioning tool, and it is there to make, you know, different arrangements possible. Also, growing up, I always heard my dad tell me, like, it's just, you know, if you have that 5-string, then you could do some of the arrangements closer to where you're playing. You know, it just makes it easier. Later on, I did find out that it kind of does, and it just gives this amazing bassy sound, which is what you want in a norteño band and a norteño bass player. When I listen to norteño bass players now, I just always look for that good base, and I think a 5-string, when played properly, gives you that. I am in my journey of really learning to get a really good rich sound, and I feel like I was able to get it with the 5-string. And with the 4, like I said, I felt like I just needed something else. Now that I play a 5, when I went out to Texas and I did a gig out there, I ended up playing with the 4-string bass, and I kind of struggled. I really did struggle because I wasn't used to playing a 4 anymore. So it just reminds me that playing a 4-string bass is equally talented as playing a 5 or a 6. You just need to understand what kind of bass player you are and what work you put into it, you know, how much work you are putting into it. So that's really all I got for the video of today. I'm really excited to post this one because I just had all that in my mind. I'm sure I missed some points, and if I did, you know, put them down in the comment box. And I like talking about basses, so hopefully I didn't offend anyone. It goes back to personal preference. You could just, you know, play whatever you want, but just make sure you're not cutting your potential by playing something that just looks cool. So just make sure that you kind of just study around what you like and what you don't like, and, you know, go from there. So good luck, happy bass playing, and keep it going. Stay golden.